Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Good day, all of you who are following us. Thanks for being our loyal followers. You are welcome to another edition of Money Radio. And today is the energy segment of Money Radio. You are welcome. We are discussing the topic today: ending the power sector's perennial liquidity crisis. Ending the power sector's perennial liquidity crisis. Yes, liquidity is a problem in the power sector, we agree. Not just from the standpoint of distribution or generating companies getting what they invest if they have invested anything, but we are talking about what they are actually going to invest. That is where the liquidity is because, like we will discuss, there has been not much, but we'll get to that. In the studio to discuss with me this issue, ending the power sector's perennial liquidity crisis is Antonio Uko. It's a you're welcome. Yes. So, my name is Case Hammer. I'm your host. So, we hit the show. It's about 8 years now since this electricity sector was privatized and broken into generating, transmission, and distribution. So the generation companies have their share. Of course, that comprises 60% of private investment and 40% of federal government investment. Then you have the transmission company, which is purely 100% government. And then we have the distribution companies. There are about 11 of them, and then we still have the 60-to ratio. Tell us, since privatization, before we go to what has happened since privatization, where were we before privatization? Please give us a rundown.
Well, Nigeria has had this issue with in the electricity sector all around the world. Poor infrastructure, poor and decaying infrastructure, um, not generating enough for consumption in the country, and then um, most people seeing power generation, availability of electricity as a government, a government something that's a responsibility, not something, not a commodity they had to pay for.
Yeah.
So you find that for long before the idea of privatization came up, Nigeria was having this issue where it wasn't getting enough for power generated and sent out. And then it was conceived, it was thought that when the private sector come take up this responsibility, they'll be able to run it as a business. And then they'll be able to inject fresh capital, they'll be able to repair the infrastructure and put up new technology that will ensure better efficiency in distribution, in the generation, distribution, transmission, and distribution of the power. Then there will be much more power available for Nigerians to use either domestically or in terms of business. And of course, the economy will be better for it. But that dream has not materialized. In fact, it is still a dream. And before privatization, um, the power that was generated and distributed was between 3,500 megawatts and 3,800 megawatts.
Not just generated, but also transmitted and distributed.
Okay. Was between 3,500 and 3,800 megawatts. So that's the point. It was privatization. That's 8 years.
Where are we now?
Unfortunately, I would say that between 2013 and 2021, the power that is distributed just hovers around an average of 4,000 megawatts. So, in 8 years, it's not a laughing issue, it's a very serious issue. But then,
I saw you laughing. That's why the laughter was infectious.
it's very, very, it's actually disheartening that in the whole of this period, barely 200 megawatts have been added in the process, and Nigerians they still lack power from the national grid. We are still having to. So many businesses still have to generate their own power by
You know,
themselves.
when you said it's disheartening, you may say it's disheartening from another standpoint in your heart. You know why it's disheartening to me? This thing is no, it's not space science. Generating, transmitting, and distributing electricity in the 21st century should be something fairly simple. You know, when people talk about in Europe and America, this is happening, that is happening, I tend to draw people's attention to our neighbors. Our neighbors. Let's take, for example, the Cote d'Ivoire. The Cote d'Ivoire. The Cote d'Ivoire has a population of about 30 million people, and they produce. I'm not just when I say produce, I'm talking about generating, transmitting, and distributing to
To
homes
homes
and
and
factories
factories.
9,300 megawatts as of today. 9,300 megawatts as of today. That is for. We're not going to South Africa. We're not going to Egypt. We're not going to North Africa or West Libya or anywhere. West Africa. 9,300 megawatts for 30 million. Ghana has a population of somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 to 40 million, and they produce something like 3,500 megawatts, which is just a little lower than what we produce. And this distributor I'm talking about, getting into homes and factories. And then a country like Senegal, which is much smaller, they produce 1,000, about 1,005. So fairly, these people have fairly enough power to use to go around and to satisfy their people. And that is why things that come from places like Cote d'Ivoire. Uh, it's not just that they've used power in Cote d'Ivoire. They have Cote d'Ivoire is a major distributor of this of power in this West Africa project. WAP, this West Africa power project. And what is it? Nigeria is a part of what it was.
Nigeria is a part of
Yes.
it.
So you produce and you sell
You
your
sell,
excess.
you sell your excess.
Yes. So right now there's a part of you know that Liberia is a war-torn country and it lacks the capacity to to invest because it's a war-torn country. So part of the solution to that was the UN partnered with the Ivory Coast and Nigeria, and they went into that West Africa power project. And right now, the hinterland, for much of the hinterland, there is stable power because it comes from the Ivory Coast. The same, the Ivory Coast has other neighbors like this Burkina Faso, I think Mali. They also distribute because that 9,300 is too much for them. Yes, so they have the capacity to distribute. Uh, Ghana also, I think Ghana distributes to Togo very well. Yeah. We distribute also, you know that we sell electricity to Benin Republic, and then I think this year we sell to them also.
When you give them money now.
Yes, there was a reason for that. At the time, you know, I was in a forum where it was explained by a power official that was around 2008. He talked about Nigerians buying electricity, whether it was 5 naira or 9 naira per unit. At that time, Nigeria was selling to the Benin Republic 23 naira per unit. So it made economic sense to sell where you generate more profit and then you keep it in money. So the issue here is just like we have our we're talking about liquidity prices. We need actually more uh, more liquidity. But how do we get this liquidity? We have to get liquidity from what we sell to what the distribution companies sell to customers. But how do they sell when they are opaque about what they are selling? You can have 50% or 60% of your service shrouded in mystery. You just come and meet a whole community, and a few persons have meters that are paying. Okay, let's say whether it's under the cost reflective or over. That's not the point. But you just come and take a whole community, and then you say we need 80 million from here, from this community, and then you distribute house per house, and then you expect that is not fair. So that is not fair.
Yeah, the coming back to
So that's the issue of liquidity. Why don't we? You know, these people when they invested in 2000, it was 2013 that
2010.
yes, that privatization process went on. When they were coming in, the promise was, or one of their mandates was to meter Nigerians.
That was for the distribution.
Yes, for the distribution companies. I don't know. I have not attacked the generating companies yet because yes, the generation companies because according to what we say, you say that they generate up to 30,000 megawatts.
No,
Okay.
there is capacity.
For capacity,
Generation capacity is almost 13,000 megawatts.
so what stops
But
our
right
okay.
now, they are not generating up to capacity.
Why?
And even, of course, it's the issue of infrastructure, not having the right infrastructure to be able to generate to that, the plants be able to generate to full capacity. And in fact, what they are able to generate, the generation companies are also losing like up to 7% of what they generate because of inability to wheel everything that is generated
Yes.
to the transmission company and then from there to the distribution company. So that also affects generation. And even at the point of after transmitting what they are able to transmit, the generation companies do not have enough infrastructure still to be able to take up everything that the generation companies are able to bring out. So the distribution companies cannot take them all. So along the line, there's so much wastage in the whole electricity supply production value chain that is one of the cause of this liquidity crisis.
Listen, I want us to go for a break. When we come back, you will tell us the way forward in all of this, please. Uh, Listeners, we want to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about the way forward. If there is
sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Welcome back to you, our viewers. You're still on to Money Radio and now to the energy segment of Money Radio. Still with me in the studio is Mr. Anthony Uko, and I am Keith Hammond, your host. We are talking about the perennial liquidity crisis in the power sector. How can that be solved? And of course, we know that when that liquidity crisis is solved, then investment will go in and then there will be solution, right? So, what about the liquidity issue right now? We are talking about power. This thing is actually, government has spent so much on this power sector. And one figure I saw was something in the neighborhood of 4 trillion naira since privatization. This was all of this was supposed to end.
Yes.
So where are we heading? There are many people calling for revisiting the private sector. I mean
The
the
privatization
process. Yes.
Yeah, the privatization process, the investors, the core investors, were to bring in their own money, capital, and invest in the companies that they got into, whether generation or distribution. And we have not seen this. And a lot of experts have played the manner in which the privatization process was carried out, that it was fraught with a whole lot of, uh, it was not properly done. That the companies were given to uh, cronies, their cronies, they say,
Yeah.
the cronies of those in authority who did not really have the wherewithal, the financial wherewithal to be able to put in, um, to be able to invest in the power sector, the needed investment, and then to turn things around. And this 8 years later, we still find the government who whose intention it was to hands off from the power sector, being the one putting money into it to keep it afloat. Because, like it's been rightly pointed out, but for the intervention of the federal government, especially the Central Bank of Nigeria, the power sector, as we speak right now, wouldn't even be able to remain afloat. Year on year, they record losses from uh, how much they are able to make out from the little that is generated and then transmitted and distributed from the national grid.
One
So,
paper said, leadership, I think it was, said the power sector is on life support. Is it leadership?
it's not leadership.
Okay. They're on life support.
But
That is basically what it is.
Yes, it is on bailouts from the government.
Why don't you just say the word life support?
Oh, you are saying it, but leadership didn't say that. But it's actually on a kind of bailout, because outside of this support, it can't keep going. So now experts are calling for a complete overhaul of the privatization process.
So what should that overhaul entail?
Let me quote one of the experts
Yeah.
in the power sector, former managing director of the defunct National Electric Power Authority, and then the Power Holding Company of Nigeria, PHCN, which were unbundled into
So
the generation and distribution companies.
Yeah.
Engineer Joseph Makoju. And he said, and I quote, "The truth of the matter is that the privatization of the electricity sector has failed, and there is need to go back to the drawing board to identify what can be done to address the root causes of the failure." And he also went on to say that unless government is ready to bite the bullet and accept the painful truth and be ready to revisit the exercise to take appropriate bold remedial actions, the sector will continue to sink further into the cycles of recurring failures followed by periodic bailouts, a process that in the long run is not sustainable and will ultimately lead to catastrophic failure of the sector. Like the person, um, we're already seeing this happening. So, in a nutshell, Nigeria needs to revisit
that
privatization. Go back and check how those companies are fed. And these companies were supposed to be reviewed. Their performance was to be reviewed in 2018, 5 years after the privatization process. That was not done. So now it's an urgent call for that review to be done, and then if it's possible that the award be overturned so that opportunities can be given to new investors to come in, investors who really know what is at stake, investors who will be able to put in money and then stop this cycle of support from the government.
Feeding bottle.
So that is where we are at right now, and what the next step that needs to be done. And then also another expert, executive director of the Niger Delta Power Holding Company, also said that Nigeria did not plan for the future, in that it did not take into account what will happen, the population in the next 50 years, when it was putting on ground the electricity infrastructure that we had, which is now decayed, which all needs to be changed. So he has advocated that a 30-year plan, development plan for the power sector be put in place. And he also brought to bear that there was a plan like that before in the 70s.
All right.
Yes, which was abandoned when the military took over power. So that all of this should be revisited, and then the plan should be brought back on stream and followed judiciously with 5-year rolling targets, and then planning for the future, not just planning for putting in place just stopgap measures that in the long run will not be sustained as the Nigeria's population explodes in the coming years.
All right, and so you have hit the point. I just want to say something before we call it a day. This is my personal, humble opinion. I think the people who own these, especially these coasts, are not losing. I think personally, they are gaining. I say so because if somebody has the willpower, not just the willpower, but the power to go to a whole community and just decide I want 60 million from this community and just distribute it. Then after
There's
that,
no evidence of that.
there is, there is. That is how they do it.
How
I
do you know?
I have interviewed. I have interviewed it. That's how they make their money. You see that two apartments are here. In fact, what they metered apartment may be paying 3, 4, 5,000 naira per month. Then the unmetered apartment is paying 20,000 naira per month. How do you explain it?
Depending on what they have in
No,
their
that's not depending on they don't go into these places to check what they have. That is the point. I can assure you that is what they do. And I've interviewed top NEPA officials, or I say NEPA, I'm talking about the electricity officials, including NEC officials, and they admitted that is what happens. So I'm not guessing. Now, if you have that power and you carry out that power to just take money from people that you can't calculate, you can't prove that they consume, that is fraud. And these people also receive federal government bailouts up to the tune of 4 trillion naira up to date. That is fraud. I think it is something just like what we experienced in the uh, petroleum sector, where people import fuel that they can't prove they imported, and they get paid by the federal government for subsidy. I think that is what is happening. The federal government is losing money. I don't see anything wrong, therefore, in getting uh, these assets back. And let the government know that we are investing and our people are consuming the money we are investing instead of giving it to a few people who cannot prove that the so and so has been consumed. And I call it effort. Now,
Well,
besides that, I want to just draw your attention to some one or two things. Look at, is it the government or the private sector that owns Cote d'Ivoire electricity? I think it's the government. Ghana is saying these countries are doing better. I'm not advocating really that the federal government should re-own NEPA or PHCN. What I'm thinking is, if these people cannot manage or they cannot, if they can't bring investment into, then there is no need keeping it in their power and then they consume.
That is exactly what experts are calling for. That
Yes.
there should be a review of their performance, and based on that review, it should be decided whether the assets should continue to be in their hands, or it should be given to other people who have the
wherewithal to do it.
to do it.
Yes.
And if that is done, Nigeria will be better for it at the
Yes.
end of the day.
Yes, I wouldn't, although I have heard one or two, and when I say reliable sources, I'm talking about people inside the power sector, and they have said the thing was done fairly. That is the process of privatization. That those people who made their who did it, who made their bid, uh, they did it on time. I was even told personally that Dangote came, but he came in later. It was late when the process had already.
So in essence, what you're saying, the assets were given to those
People who
came,
who indicated interest.
indicated interest, and named the certified time.
Yes, that's what I was told, and I say from a reliable source, an in-house person told me. And, so I wouldn't want to blame them on that because I respect this personality. But I think those people that they were on time or they indicated their interest on time, I think that thing needs to be reviewed. It needs to be reviewed. I think they are just feeling fat on Nigerians and the federal government from both ends because it's federal Nigerians is taxpayers' money that is being given to them to the tune of 4 trillion naira. It's also Nigerians that they rob when they bring estimated billing that is not. Okay, do they call that one cost reflective? So
Well, the federal government has taken up the responsibility of monitoring Nigeria. So let's hope that it goes on schedule. There's been a lot of issues affecting it. It's not going at the speed that
as much as they are being paid, the federal government is paying for meters for individuals. These people still want to be paid to install the meters. Don't you know that? They want to be paid. They receive payment. Even individuals who go and buy meters, it takes time before those meters are delivered. And when they are delivered, people make some payment. So those are the kind of things that the federal government should put an end to. Because that is, look, it's stealing. It's stealing. Stealing.
See, you're so passionate about this.
Oh yes, I am.
And if you're left, you will go
Yeah.
on and on.
So,
unfortunately,
let's call it a day here. That's the much we can take. Yeah.
Today,
Yeah.
and we will come back into a more bumper edition.
Yeah. By Monday. Yeah. So, thanks for being with us. All of you are loyal followers. Thanks to you, the producers. So, thank you very much. I have been your host, and I say thank you very much. COVID-19 is real. Stay safe. God bless you.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.